sure that most of you have heard about the another school shooting that happened this past Tuesday, and it seems to be a growing problem, and no one seems to completely understand why it's happening. One reason that many people suggest is maybe how violent the media outlets are for the youth these days, with TV, and video games, and music, perhaps supporting these claims. But I believe there's more than one thing that could be attributed to that, such as mental health issues or maybe even political motivations. So to solely blame one outlet, I don't think it's a strong enough evidence to be able to say so. And in fact, if you look through history in present day, there's been situations where certain violent media outlets have prevented some bloodshed, as well as the government actually monitors the violent media with censorship, as we all know. So to be able to blame it on one violent media outlet is to exaggerate its influence over the youth. For example, my little brother got a Nerf gun for Christmas, which he's very excited about. And when he showed it to me, it kind of startled me at first how realistic it was. Because it's a pump-action semi-automatic rifle that has a chamber for the gun. It also has a 12-round magazine that goes in and out just like a real gun. And when I first tried to use it, I actually jammed it, and he was able to unjam it and reload it in seconds. And to be able to do that kind of startled me at first, saying that that's crazy. Why would he know how to use an almost real weapon, even though it's for play? And then I realized when I was 6 years old, the same age he was, I was doing martial arts. And I studied Taekwondo, and we learned how to hurt each other and use pressure points and break wood. And even though we had that knowledge, we never actually fought anyone that weren't in those controlled conditions. We didn't abuse that knowledge of violence to be able to hurt anyone else. And even though we were provoked many times, I know especially for myself throughout school, with other people trying to start fights, I never got into one because we were taught to not do that. So to be able to say that knowledge of violence or the ability to do violent things does not inherently create violent people. So also, to try to take that knowledge about the fact that knowledge of violence doesn't create violence, if you look in the past, we can look at an example of the Vietnam War, which is one of the most publicized wars that there has ever been. And when people were able to see what was happening, it didn't glamorize it. It made people realize how horrible it was. In fact, when there is this picture of this man with a gun, his name is General Lau, and he was the police commander of the Southern Vietnamese police force. And he's actually executing a Viet Cong man who was handcuffed in the streets. And after this was broadcasted, people were outraged that this was happening. Even though the Viet Cong was supposed to be the enemy, it's supposed to be okay to defeat the enemy. The fact that it was so brutal didn't make people agree with it. And youth actually rose in protest to fight these types of actions that were happening. And there was to put this in something that was fictional instead of just nonfiction, the movie Boys in the Hood that came out in the 90s, it had a realistic portrayal of how it was to live like a gangster or a hood rat that lived in South Central LA. And during that time, there was some music in movies that glamorized this life. And that could be a reason why some people would believe that youth would try to imitate these people. But this movie actually had a realistic portrayal of how that affects their lives. And the fact that they chose this dangerous life destroyed each of their lives of each character. And that could be viewed. Now, even for those people who don't want any kind of media, who believe that violent media with positive messages or negative messages will negatively affect our youth, can always look forward to how the government uses censorship ways to keep that so it can be monitored. For instance, the group that's called called the Entertainment Software Rating Board. That's what this logo stands for. And these are all the ratings that are given to any game. So charting for children, everyone above 10, teenagers, mature, which is 17 and older, and adults. Now, this rating system is built on who can purchase these games. So anyone below these ages cannot purchase these games. So all the games that people refer to are violent, like Call of Duty or Halo, that is violent, almost killing people, only adults can actually purchase this game. So the parents of these individuals can actually choose whether they want their children to play or not. And any violent language or anything that can happen, even though the board cannot actually control what people say online participation is actually normally bulked so that you can have the game and not actually have access to play it online. So if a parent chose to do so, they can allow their children to play these mature games, but keep them from the influence of people online that can say bad things. And this also translates to music as well, and that's with the parental advisory. This is on every single album that has an explicit song. So even if only one song out of the entire album has an explicit song in it, and explicit is described as either having drug references, violence, or sex within song lyrics, that's when they get folks to have these parental advisories. So it can be monitored if anyone was able to buy these to say that they should or shouldn't have it. This also is on online as well, so this isn't just an in-person album. Anytime you go online, it's attached to every MP3 file, whether it's explicit or not. So there's actually no way for a child to be able to legally, anyways, have a song without it being labeled. So with being able to actually monitor whether your children or any youth is able to reach it, the fact that violence can also be good or bad is negligible to how they eventually will grow up and act if you're able to control how much they're exposed to it. So every individual case can be compared. So if we look at evidence from past and present, we conclude that this issue of violent media is a bit exaggerated and it's given too much power on how much the youth actually participates, and that violence knowledge can be essential, just like how children knowing about death isn't a bad thing. It's something that we all have to learn and grow up to become, to understand. And the parents have the power to control what the youth does and does not see. So to be able to blame violence as if it's some kind of media that no one can control and that your kids are going to have to absorb and then have to transform into some kind of person that is appreciating or looks forward to violence is unfounded, because you can teach your children, just like any other method, to understand violence and use it in good or bad